in overall terms, what fluoridation of public water supplies is doing to the people of the United States right now. We're chronically poisoning over 150 million Americans by means of fluoridation of public water supplies. 25 million of them have been so badly poisoned that you can see white chalky areas in their teeth. This is the first symptom of fluoride poisoning, called dental fluorosis. A large number of the 40 million arthritics in this country are suffering from arthritis as a result of fluoride in the water supply. We have about 2 million people who are allergic or experience hypersensitive reactions to fluoride. We have about 35,000, an estimated 35,000 deaths a year, that's 100 deaths a day, due to fluoridation of public water supplies. And over 10,000 of those 35,000 are due to the effect of fluoride in inducing cancer and cancer death. First of all, how many people here know what an enzyme is? Anybody? Can somebody give me an answer? What is an enzyme? It's a protein. What else? It's a catalyst. What it does is it facilitates reactions in our body that make life possible. In other words, in our body we can burn sugar, which normally would require hundreds and hundreds of degrees to burn. We can burn it at 98.6 degrees centigrade. It's responsible, these enzymes are responsible for the breakdown of foods, release of calories and energy, the buildup of cell components, the breakdown of older cell components, responsible for rejuvenation, responsible for repair of our body, responsible for excretion of waste products from our body. Virtually everything in our body is under physiological control of these very important proteins called enzymes. Now, fluoride inhibits, at 1 part per million, fluoride inhibits over 10 that we know of, and probably we're talking about the amount that's used to fluoridate public water supplies, an estimated 100 or more other enzymes. One of the most important enzymes with regard to cancer is an enzyme system called the DNA repair enzyme system. This enzyme system exists in the nucleus, or the nuclei, of every one of the cells in our body, with the exception of red blood cells, which don't have a nucleus. But every cell that has a nucleus in our body and has genetic material has a DNA repair enzyme system. 1 part per million fluoride, which is the amount they add to public water supplies, inhibits this enzyme system by 50%. Now, the importance of this is that if we're taking a walk out in the sun and ultraviolet light falls on our skin, if we take something in our diet that happens to cause chromosomal damage or might cause cancer, we have the ability within each one of our cells to repair the damage done, and that ability is reduced by 50% just by drinking fluoridated water. Now, in addition to that, I would say there are about close to 40 papers showing that fluoride at levels down to and including the amount used to fluoridate public water supplies causes genetic damage. The effects of genetic damage can be varied. The cell can die, which is probably the best thing that could happen, because you no longer have that cell to deal with. It's not going to become a cancer cell. It's not going to put bad things into the person's body. Or it can make that cell become toxic, which means that by means of damaging one of the regulatory sites on that genetic material, enzymes will be produced that will crank out substances which are toxic to the body, leading to degenerative diseases. And this is what happens in the case of dental fluorosis and arthritis as a result of fluoride's effect. What also can happen if this genetic damage occurs in a sperm cell or an egg cell, it can lead to birth defects. And the horrible thing about these birth defects is they will be carried on from generation to generation to generation. These pieces of damage that fluoride does to our genetics become permanent. And as long as that cell line continues, that flaw will continue for generation upon generation, even if none of the future generations even drink fluoridated water. And then finally, if fluoride causes damage at the part of the genetic material which controls cell growth, you have a break and no longer will that cell be able to have its growth controlled, and it will result in a tumor. And if the tumor excretes proteolytic enzymes to digest away other cells, it becomes a malignant tumor, or what we refer to as cancer. Now in 1963, as early as 1963, Drs. Herskowitz and Norton found, and by the way, Dr. Herskowitz is a well-known geneticist. He's published 9 textbooks on genetics. He and his co-worker, Dr. Norton, found that as they increased fluoride in the medium of their animals, they could increase tumor incidence from 12 to 100%. In other words, they could induce tumors in 100% of their animals. In 1963, in 1965, Drs. Taylor and Taylor from the University of Texas at Austin, at the Clayton Biochemical Research Institute, that's where Roger Williams is from, found that 1 part per million in the water of fluoride increased tumor growth rate by 25%. Now, before I go into explaining why this happened, let me also explain that fluoride at 1 part per million inhibits the immune system by from 30 to 70%. So by means of destroying our genetic repair system, we've destroyed in large part, or impaired in large part, our primary defense mechanism against cancer. And now we've destroyed a large part of the immune system. We have now destroyed the secondary defense mechanism, which is the immune system. And this is exactly what Taylor and Taylor found out. That they would inject a small amount of cancer cells, have 1 part of their animals drink non-fluoridated water, the other drink fluoridated water, and tumor growth rate would be enhanced by 25% because the immune system could no longer effectively, or as effectively, hold back the tumor growth rate. That was in 1965. In the 70s, a number of studies came out showing additional work from Columbia University, from University of Missouri, showing genetic damage from fluoride. And then in 1974 and 1975, Dr. Dean Burke, who's the former chief chemist of the National Cancer Institute, and by the way, one of the recipients of Cancer Control Society's Humanitarian Award, and myself, started studies which showed that we could find, and we did find, after very extensive epidemiological studies, over 10,000 excess cancer deaths in areas that were fluoridated as compared to those that were not fluoridated. We looked at somewhere in the order, well over 1 million cancer deaths, and looked before fluoridation in either group of cities occurred, no difference in cancer death rate or death rate trends. Shortly after, within 2 or 3 to 5 years after fluoridation, a marked divergence, with the fluoridated cities' cancer death rate going up substantially. We corrected for various variables such as age, race, and sex of the population, and found and confirmed, and in 3 out of 4 court cases in this country proved, by a preponderance of the evidence, that fluoridation caused chronic toxic effects, genetic damage, and cancer. And these cases were heard between 1978 and 1982. The decisions came out, and we'll talk about the politics later on. But we were able to prove by a preponderance of the evidence. And we had people from the National Cancer Institute, National Academy of Sciences, Royal Statistical Society, Royal College of Physicians coming in against us. And the judges in these cases gave overwhelming support to the fact that we were able to show the link and no one could question it. In 1977, Congress held hearings, 2 days of hearings on the work of Dr. Burke and myself, and at that time instigated with the National Toxicology Program. By the way, at this whole thing, when our studies were coming out, the National Cancer Institute was making bogus claims that our studies didn't make certain corrections. During the congressional hearings, it was found that the National Cancer Institute, along with the Royal College of Physicians and Royal Statistical Society, were involved in the conspiracy and actually published as independent studies data that was erroneous and supplied by our own U.S. National Cancer Institute to the British workers. This was brought out of the hearings, and they said, we can no longer go with this. We're telling the National Cancer Institute to go back, do additional research, and 3 years from now, in 1980, we want studies on animal studies to find out whether fluoride causes cancer or not. I was supposed to be on the protocol committee. I never was.